Welcome back. You've just tuned into Women's AM. This morning, I'm joined by Sister Hannah, Sister Nusrat, and Sister Leyla Habibti. So, alhamdulillah, we've got you, Sister. MashaAllah, you are a spokesperson for Inspirited Minds. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, Inspirited Minds is a UK-based registered charity, and alhamdulillah, their aim is to help not only individuals but families and the community understand mental health, especially within the Asian and ethnic communities. Now, alhamdulillah, we have qualified counsellors, and every single one of our counsellors, have the Islamic knowledge as well, so they're able to help, you know,
our brothers and sisters.
Yeah, our brothers and sisters. I mean, especially those that are suffering from some form of mental health that they can't really understand it, and it's all anonymous. And the good thing is that because they have that Islamic knowledge as well, they can help them in the best way possible.
So they're able to give them advice that isn't contradictory to their belief, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, yeah, because, I mean, the issue that we've found is that there is a lack of understanding within the healthcare services, like be it even the police, you know, and other counsellors and psychologists that don't really understand the ethnic issues and the different cultural issues. So
alhamdulillah, it's good to have somewhere where people can go to where they're understood, their culture, their beliefs are understood. So mashallah, jazakallah khair. We'll be going on to a little bit more on that, inshallah. So without further ado, let's go straight to her views, where today we're discussing mental health. Mental health and well-being is an issue that affects many people, both individually and collectively. However, amongst some members of society, especially in the Muslim community, there's an apprehension in the air in discussing mental health, its importance and the many ways it manifests. In turn, this makes it difficult to not only address these issues, but provide appropriate help and support to those in need. This is further exacerbated when misconceptions are founded upon the lack of awareness. So what is mental health and what do you know about it? As always, this is a live discussion with the panel, so if you have any comments or questions on mental health, please do call in. The number is on your screens now, or why not tweet us at Islam Channel #WAM15. So, Sister Leyla, I'm going to come to you first. So, you know, when we refer to the term of mental health and all things surrounding it, what do we actually mean?
There is no right or wrong answer to it. I mean, mental health has become more of a what is your interpretation kind of thing. When we're discussing it, the correct term is a person's condition with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being. And unfortunately, within the cultural community, we find that a lot of the a lot of the elders tend to think that if you suffer from mental health, it's more of the severe form, you know, like things like schizophrenia, not realising that something simple such as depression or anxiety is also classed as a form of mental health.
I think we kind of tend to ignore these things as well, I think, because we feel that sometimes, you know, it's seen as a bit of a weakness if we admit that we're stressed or we're feeling some anxiety or anything like that. So sometimes it doesn't help either that we don't really discuss this. I mean, you know, we find within society that, you know, the issue of mental health and discussions that come with it are considered taboo, and, you know, they're approached with unease within the community. I mean, Sister Hannah, what can we say about this?
I think primarily it's what you were mentioning earlier in terms of the lack of awareness about the ways in which mental health manifests. I mean, we're living in a time where, you know, our lives are perceived as easier. You know, we've got technology, we've got more free time. It's not so much as perhaps how lives were before in terms of, you know, just getting a job in order to, you know, get, you know, living hand to mouth kind of scenario. But essentially this has presented a whole new set of challenges and, you know, emotional and psychological and stresses, and these aren't always recognised. I think the impact of the community and society is also very important. You know, lots of people, they don't have a satisfactory support network. We've seen the breakdown of the family unit, especially in the West, over the past few years. If people don't have anyone to confide in, then they can feel especially alone and having to deal with these problems by themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, it's quite sad that we do tend to feel like we can't actually talk about it, and therefore isolating ourselves, which makes the problem even worse. I mean, you know, Nusrat, I know that you've got some very clear sort of points that you want to make on the fact that, you know, why is it in the community we're not able to approach this subject?
I think partly why we're not able to approach this subject is due to, yes, lack of awareness. And as much as we do live in a society where we do find the rise, particularly in TV and film, the rise of people who are mentally ill, or at least portraying this in storylines. So we have people like Stacey Browning, Jean Slater from EastEnders. They're not portrayed in the best of light. And when you have this happening, it influences one's opinions, and upon that, discrimination occurs. Stephen Fry, who actually said for the National Voluntary Sector Campaign Time to Change, said, 1 in 4 people like me have a mental health problem. Many people have a problem with that. Because of our attitudes towards it, it makes it difficult for actually people who are sufferers and those that are around them, that are caring for them, to actually develop a kind of discourse about that and the various forms it takes place. So for a person who is schizophrenic, for example, or suffers from severe anxiety attacks, a person who's depressed, they're going to find it very difficult because of these conceptions. And then there's judgment. Particularly within the Muslim community, we find the idea that a person has to feel weak, or that a person has depression, or that they have anxiety as a weakness of Iman necessarily. We tend to just relegate it to that, or it's a ruqya issue. Now, Ruqya is important. Well, at least it has its benefits or its role in certain aspects. But sometimes a person does not necessarily need that. Sometimes they need someone to just talk to.
I think it's about admitting that actually, no, it's a mental health issue. It's not necessarily something that is beyond what we can do to help, subhanAllah. And you know, it's quite surprising when you look at the statistics of people who suffer from mental health issues, that you find that women are more likely to have been treated for mental health problems than men. And it's quite sad to see, because you do find, especially within the Muslim community, that we do say that the man is the leader of the family, that he is the one who is supposed to be, you know, the pillar within the family who holds everyone upright. And you find that, subhanAllah, it's very difficult for them to talk about what they're going through, and to talk about the fact that maybe they are facing some mental health issues, but they don't feel that they can talk about it because it might seem as though it diminishes, you know, their manhood or their status as the leader in the family, which is very sad. I mean, what has been your experience, Sister Leyla, in terms of the people that have come in to use the services?
Well, alhamdulillah, since our launch event, we've had a lot of, especially because it is an anonymous service that we offer, and for anybody that is watching that does want to contact them, you can do it via the website. But because it's anonymous, we've had a lot of brothers that have approached us as well, and that have spoken to our counsellors, because just like you said, there's always been that, I'm too scared to speak about it, or what would the family think, or what would society think, what would the community think? And that's something that needs to stop. You know, we shouldn't worry about what Auntie Shabnam at number 41 is going to think. Do you know what I mean? It's, you know, it's something that we need to kind of address, and address it now.
So how do we, what are sort of the signs that we can, that would indicate a decline in mental health? What are sort of things that we should be looking out for?
There are no set signs, so to speak. I mean, it's been categorised into 2 different kind of forms. You know, you've got neurotic and psychotic. Neurotic is more a severe form of your emotional well-being, you know, things like depression and anxiety, and the psychotic is more of someone's own interpretation of reality. You know, I mean, for example, as Sister Nusrat kind of brushed up upon, jinn issues does exist, but however, if you have a brother or a sister that's been a victim of abuse for X amount of years, that trauma will effectively make them have what we call a battle of the mind. So they have their own interpretation of reality. You know, the way they do things, they'll hallucinate, they'll see things, feel things, you know, hear things differently to other people. It's not because they have a jinn issue, which is, unfortunately, a lot of communities will say this is what they've got. No, it's because they actually are suffering and they need professional help.
It comes down to a lack of knowledge sometimes as well. I think it's being able to acknowledge that certain things, while, you know, Allah, you know, puts certain things in people's lives, whatever they may be, that certain things are actually to do with mental health issues rather than something else. I think one of the things that we can look out for, I was reading up on this as well, is that sometimes people's behaviours change. So if you used to enjoy doing a certain activity, if you were somebody who, you know, who's very on top of your game, alhamdulillah, you know, certain things kind of start to slip for a prolonged period of time. You know, maybe you're not interested in things that you were interested in before, or maybe you're just generally not looking after yourself anymore. So I think maybe these are some of the things that we can say, you know, to kind of look out for. Maybe just generally feeling a little bit apathetic.
Well, That, yes, but also what we've seen as well, I've come across sisters that other people are judging. You know, this sister, she'll be someone that likes to have a good time. She's going out a lot. But, you know, she's trying to put on, because what you find is that a lot of people, especially the brothers, they'll put on their mask. You know, this is me, but this is me sad afterwards. Do you know what I mean? When they're on their own. You know, so it's hard to tell when someone is suffering from any form of mental health, because they will look just like you and me. You know, they'll be smiling, they'll be happy. So it's very hard to tell.
I think what exacerbates the situation, particularly in the context of brothers, is that sisters generally, more so maybe compared to brothers, tend to have that kind of ability where we can kind of talk to each other. Now, I admit that talking to people isn't particularly easy, but women generally are more receptive to that kind of talk. So I guess you would have kind of the Oprah moments where you can kind of talk. With brothers, I don't really see that many Oprah moments happening, and because they have to have this facade of actually being strong and in charge, it makes it all the more difficult, where if they do show a weakness, it's kind of looked at as something being like, well, what are you doing? You look very weak doing that. So it's harder.
Yeah, subhanAllah, it is. It's, you know, it's like people take it as an indication of that you are weak, and no one wants to appear weak. But subhanAllah, you know, we're human beings. You know, we're not perfect. You know, we are going to have our ups and downs, and I think we have to be understanding towards each other. And it's a shame. It's a shame that we don't feel like we can approach maybe even family members in talking to them about whatever issues that we're going through. I mean, Hannah, mashallah, you're a young person. What do you see within, you know, the sort of reality that you live in? Do you find that, especially young people, find it very difficult to talk to family members about whatever issues that they're facing?
Yeah, I think perhaps it comes down to, you know, like you're saying, regardless of whether, you know, you specifically have a mental health problem or whether, you know, you're just coping with life's everyday stresses, you know, you can feel very isolated living, you know, with the various challenges that living in the modern era does present to you. I mean, I was also reading up on this topic, and I found a very interesting article which was saying that there are an increasing number of studies that indicate that the Muslim community generally, and young people definitely fall into that category, is facing deteriorating mental health due to the ostracization and pressure and hostility that they see in the media towards Muslims, and then, you know, from other institutions, or just discrimination that they face. And it's almost a vicious circle that when you feel like you're ostracized, you become more and more isolated and more reluctant to kind of talk about it or talk to anybody else, and just you're only worsening your own condition therefore.
Yeah, subhanAllah, it's not easy, and I think sometimes with you know, the role of technology, like you said, you know, it makes life easier, but at the same time, it's so easy to kind of slip into the cyber world and kind of, you know, you lose track of reality in a way, and you don't tend to socialize as much as you used to. You know, the whole realm of, you know, the way that you interact with others, the way that you socialize, the way you connect has totally changed, and sometimes we think that we're connected to others, but in reality we're not. You know, we're kind of, you know, in our little corner of the room typing away, and we don't realize that it's actually sometimes doing a little more harm than good. So this is, alhamdulillah, a conversation that we're going to come back to after the break. We've had a really interesting discussion so far on this topic, but we are coming up to our next break, so stay where you are, and we'll return to this discussion shortly to get advice from our panelists. But just before all that, it's a new week, which means a new competition, so here are the details. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Women's AM. This morning I am joined by Sister Hannah, Nusrat and Leyla to discuss mental health. So far it's been a really interesting discussion, but we would love for you to call in and share with us whatever your personal experiences are. So please call in, the number is on your screen, or tweet us at Islam Channel #WAM15. So continuing on with where we were, I was just about to ask, what impact does the state of one's mental health have on one's you know, on the individual and as a collective, Sister Leyla?
It's a bit of a tricky one, and it's complex as well, because someone that's suffering from mental health, it's going to affect not only the individual, like you said, but their family, their friends, and everyone. I mean, one of the severe cases that I've come across is not the most severe, but it's one that is quite concerning because it happens all too often. There was a sister that, you know, subhanAllah, she'd been a victim of abuse, and she did kind of speak to her family about it because she was very depressed. The sister had been self-harming. the best way her parents could deal with her is to get her married off to someone from back home. Now, this issue, I mean, the fact that the sister's already going through something traumatic, she feels violated. To her, being married, it's going to violate her even more. But this is the community's answer to dealing with the issue by brushing it under the carpet. What's happened to the sister? She's still self-harming. You know, she's having problems with this marriage because she doesn't feel connected. You know, and again, subhanAllah, she's left. You know, she has left this brother, and the thing is, it's not the brother's fault. You know, from what she said to me, he's tried to be as understanding as he can be. But then not only because the situation wasn't dealt with correctly, it's affected not only her, but her family and the community, because that's who they were worried about the most. But again, it does affect someone. And, you know, if like you say, if you're happy, the people around you are going to be happy. If you're sad, it's going to impact everyone around you.
I think it's a shame that sometimes we do tend to fall into, you know, brushing things off, trying to hide it under the carpet, because we tend to think of, oh my goodness, what are the community going to think? And it does have a massive impact, because I'm sure for those parents, it hurt them to see that their daughter, you know, had been violated, and perhaps it hurt them even more that, you know, maybe the marriage didn't work out as they were hoping it would have, maybe, you know, sorted everything out for her, but it hasn't. So it's really sad to kind of see how things are just, instead of dealing, it becomes a bigger problem.
Brushing the issue under the carpet does not solve it. It's kind of like, for example, ignoring the fact that there's an alarm clock going on. Just by putting snooze, it doesn't help. But I think the individual impact that mental health when in decline does have is that we have low self-worth and confidence, and upon that happening, you'll find that the person tends to have always be ingrained in negative thoughts. Those negative thoughts can result in them, yes, self-harming, doing other things as well, but also their socialization and interaction. You'll find that they're more reclusive, and because of that, they become, I guess, in their own cloud of actual misery, which doesn't help. Now, particularly if that mentally ill person has to actually is actually like a breadwinner, or is in a role of responsibility, particularly in the context of children, that's going to have an impact on the child, because we find that many children actually, particularly when their parents are hospitalized, take on the role of being a carer. And particularly when you are young, it's a lot of responsibility on you, to the point where role reversal happens, and it creates confusion. For example, research according to the American Academy of Children and Adolescent Psychiatry, and this was actually in America, children of parents of mentally ill, children of parents with mental illness are at risk of developing mental illnesses themselves, particularly if both of the parents are mentally ill. And if you have anxiety, depression, this impacts on the child. And I think Jamie Byrne, who's actually wrote a publication for Friends for Mental Health in Canada, even said that because of this role reversal, children are actually confused and end up actually in later life having these kind of difficulties, because they don't know what it's like to experience their childhood. They don't know how to respond to when their parent is bipolar.
It's a case of having to grow up very, very quickly, and I think you see that a lot as well in this country. They've, mashallah, there are organisations set up to help young carers who are looking after their parents for whatever reason. It might be because of a disability or because of mental health issues, and it's sad that, you know, that this is the case. And I think this is where the community needs to kind of step in, you know, whether it's relatives or people that just live around them, to kind of help and alleviate, you know, that kind of burden, because it's difficult for a child. I mean, children are going through a lot of, you know, life-changing processes, and for them to have that on top of it, you know, of everything else, it's very, very difficult.
I mean, bipolar is not the most severe, but it's equally as hard, because especially if you know, for mothers, I've known mothers that suffer, that do have bipolar, or that are bipolar, sorry, and what you'll find is that one minute she'll be happy, she'll be, you know, the best mummy in the world, the next minute, you know, stay away from mummy, I'm not, you know, the best person right now, I don't want to speak to anyone, I hate everyone, you know, and it's just that complete, like, change of character. And for a child to understand that, it's extremely difficult, and for a partner to understand that, or parents to understand that, it's difficult. You know, one minute I'm happy, one minute I'm sad. Don't ask me why I'm sad, don't ask me why I'm angry, just leave me alone, I'll calm down on my own. But what we need is people to be more understanding. They brush it under the carpet, not because they're scared, it's because it's a lack of education. It's their ignorance, you know. And this is why it's important for people to understand it more.
But I think sometimes it can come down to maybe, you know, if you don't admit that there's a problem, then you can kind of go on believing that everything's okay, because sometimes it's a self-preservation thing. We don't admit that something's wrong, because if we do, then that means that we have to try and fix it. And sometimes fixing it can seem like a very, very hard thing to do. You know, taking the steps to try and address an issue can seem like a very, very overwhelming thing to do. I mean, an aspect that we haven't discussed yet is, you know, the effect, you know, that sometimes children can suffer from mental health issues. You know, you get children who seem very, very angry, or who seem very, very sad, or who just, you know, very anxious. We don't like to admit that children get stressed. We think, oh, well, they're a child. Why would they feel stressed? Everything's fine. They get to play. They don't have any responsibility. Everything's okay. But Hannah, what would you say about this?
No. I remember in some of the research I was reading, there was an article that parents overestimate the happiness of their children sort of under sort of 11, 12 of that age, and they underestimate the happiness of teenagers, because I think it's just about, you know, society stereotypes that teenagers are moody and their hormones and blah blah blah, which is all true. But I think again it's about, like you're saying, admitting that there is a problem sometimes where there is, and, you know, seeking the relevant help, and, you know, working together as a family, as a community, having that support
because
network.
sometimes it's even more difficult to realize that maybe your child is suffering from mental health issues. You know, you see them as you think that they're just being brats, you think that they're just acting up and they're just being silly and things like that, and you don't realize that maybe there's something a little bit more going on, you know.
That's why it's important. That's why I think it's important to even have that kind of talk with your children regularly. How was your day, sweetie? How did you get on? Is there a friend that you made? Having that constant bond really does help, because they'll feel open to want to talk to you about it.
Yeah, or if they're angry a lot of the time, sometimes it can come down to the fact that they don't know how to verbalize. They don't know how to verbalize what it is that they're going through, or what's making them upset, which is unfortunate. And I think, like you said, it's making that time to talk to them as well. But how can we improve our mental health? So especially when it comes down to stress and depression and anxiety, what are the things that we can do?
Well, the best advice that I can give anyone, first and foremost, is to put your trust in Allah. That's the first. And the second thing is to surround yourself with people that is going to boost your iman. Because the thing is, and I know this from personal experiences as well, when you're suffering from any form of mental health, even from depression to schizophrenia, anything in between, your Islamic knowledge and your iman, it will...
It'll help ground you. I think
it will help ground you completely.
But I think it's really important as well, like you are the spokesperson, mashallah, for an organisation that helps people to go and actually search for professional help, because sometimes, you know, it might not be enough just to have positive people around you. You need practical steps in moving forward. Sisters, last bits of advice that you can give to any viewers at home.
I'd say coordinate with your doctor and research about these kind of issues. It makes it easier to understand what's going on as well. Integrate them into society and always make them feel loved. I think that's very, very much needed, and obviously you should have trust in Allah.
Yeah, I think as well, you know, subhanAllah, everything, you know, that everybody else has said, and this whole discussion has been very productive, but having that tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, Allah says in Surah Sharh, verse 5, you know, inna ma'al usri yusra, after hardship comes ease, really believing in that, trusting in that, you know, obviously making sure that you don't lose that bond and connection with Islam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and of course definitely, you know, surrounding yourself with people who will aid you and help you as well, you know, where professional help is needed, will make sure that you get that.
But even to admit, you know, that sometimes you need help. We don't like to admit that we need help. We like to believe that we can do it all, we're okay, we're going to get through it, and sometimes that is the case, we can get through it, but it's okay to seek out help.
Oh, definitely.
It's okay to seek out help, because at the end of the day we're human, you know, and this life is not perfect, and we're not perfect, and alhamdulillah, with Allah's help, in whatever way that manifests itself, we should try and take that. So jazakallah khair for that, sisters. Mental health and the issues surrounding this is something we should not be ashamed to discuss. Rather, we should look at raising awareness and engaging in dialogue, as well as means of helping us find ways to not only help those affected, but combating misconceptions and ensuring the holistic mental and spiritual balance of society is dealt with. For those going through difficult times with fluctuating mental health, it's not easy. However, we are comforted by the divine words of Allah that you're not alone, and through this difficult time does come ease, where Allah has mentioned, verily with the hardship there is relief. i.e. there is no hardship with two reliefs, so one hardship cannot overcome two reliefs. So this is from Surah Ash-Shahr. I pray that you've benefited from this discussion and that advice from the panelists has been of help to you. And don't forget, if you've missed any of today's show, all is not lost. You can catch up with the highlights from this week on Sunday at 3 p.m. And of course, you can catch up with the episodes on YouTube. So here are the details on that.